Hi, my name is Jamie Lynch, and you are listening to Eating Habits, my podcast about everything restaurants. I will explore the human element of the hospitality business, and I'll talk to the who's who in restaurants, explore their stories, and hear what's on their minds in the ever-changing landscape of the food and beverage industry.
Hey, I'm Jonathan Kish, 82 Queen, Jalisco Taqueria, and we're here with Eating Habits.
Thank you. Nice to meet you, Jonathan.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for having me.
Welcome to the podcast.
Absolutely.
Cool. All right. So let's figure out who you are.
I'm trying to figure that out still too.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Excellent. It's a long, windy road.
I tell the staff, I'm still trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. So I don't know the answer to that yet, but I can tell you where I've been.
So how'd you end up in hospitality?
So I was born in 84, and 82 Queen was born in 82. I was born pretty much into 82 Queen.
Gotcha.
My father was the founding chef, and so that was the way to go see Dad.
Okay.
Was go to work. So I've been in the hospitality industry pretty much my entire life.
Okay, great. So your father, Steve, was the chef partner.
Correct.
Of 82.
Yeah.
Interesting. I didn't realize he was a chef.
Yeah. He was he came from Seabrook.
Okay.
So there's a couple people who came from Seabrook to start 82 Queen.
Okay.
And so he was the sous chef at Seabrook, the acting executive chef. He got angry at them for not making him actually the executive chef. And so he left there with the GM at the time. They started 82 Queen.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Very cool. And that way, they opened that in 82, you said?
In 82, yeah.
Okay, so that's been around for a hot minute. It is a
40
staple.
years, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
How was that experience for you coming up in the restaurant? Because I have an 18-year-old son who is actually a barista at our French restaurant in Charlotte.
Nice.
So he came up through the restaurant business as well. I'm wondering what your experience was.
I mean, I loved it. And I guess 82 Queen's a weird place, and I didn't know that, for a long time because it's like 3 houses put together into one building. And so then I go and I go to college, I go to Clemson, and I start working at other restaurants. People are saying how hard it is, and I'm like, I'm used to running between buildings, and I got to deal with rain and this and that, and this is nothing.
Yeah, the kitchen's over here.
I
got to go to a new
the dish room's over here.
Yeah.
Everything's in the wrong spot, but it works in this kind of beautiful weirdness. So I had fun growing up in it, and it was for me I got to go to work with Dad all the time, and so then I started in the kitchen.
Yep.
That lasted a couple of years, and then I realized there was money in the front of the house, so went to the front of the house, made the money,
story.
And then I thought it was cool at the time. Now looking back, I'm like, they really screwed me. But they needed a Sunday manager. So at 17, I was the Sunday manager.
Yeah.
Like, this is cool. I'm a manager. And so I'm the Sunday manager at 17 years old and realized they just,
Yeah, they were playing you.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to do that shift.
Yeah, exactly.
It's low impact. That's funny.
Then went to Clemson, and the whole time I was there, my dad was like, "You're getting out of the industry." I'm like, "I am. I kind of want to do it." I was thinking about doing this. Got into financial services. And so I've sold everything you can imagine in financial services. The last was investments. And then that led me to working at a family office where we started about 13 businesses in there. So that was my MBA, was that. The last one was a restaurant. So there was a car wash, gas station, barbecue restaurant all in one spot.
Oh, wow.
Really cool spot. That opened up in 2012. So we had nobody to run it. So guess who got to run it? The guy who has experience in restaurants. And then I realized that I have no experience in restaurants. Going from serving to Sunday managing, working in the kitchen a little bit to now you're operating a restaurant.
Right.
Completely different ball game.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that experience of operating a business rather than managing a Sunday dinner service.
Yeah. So that was my first real crack at it, actually understanding it. So I had to do everything from, we didn't have a chef. So I started coming up with the menu. Then I realized, I need a chef. I'm not a chef.
Right.
So we hired a chef, and then it was like, I've got a car wash to run. I need a car wash manager. that place was so weird.
Yeah.
And so I had to,
and a lot of different facets happening out of the same operation.
Yeah. And so, it's, out the gates from a revenue standpoint, it was a $10 million a year store. Wow. Out the gates, but it needed that. So, the gas station alone, $6 million.
Wow.
On that, and you don't make any money on $6 million, which is crazy. You think from a restaurant standpoint, you can make good money on $6 million. But
so mark gas station off my list.
If your gas station's not doing $12 million, it's not worth it. But I learned so fast what I needed to learn.
Yeah.
And I think it was good for me to have that experience, doing that. And then we had my first kid at the same time. And so that was operating that. We got that going, got it profitable. I called my dad and I said, this is in Arizona. So I didn't mention that either. I was living in Arizona at the time.
Gotcha.
I was like, I got to come home. So, if nothing else, I'm working 100 hours a week for somebody else. It's great experience. but I'd rather come home and do it, raise my kids in Charleston, and, you know, come back to the business.
Yeah.
So I called my dad. I said, I'm coming back to work. I didn't give him a choice. I said, I'm coming back to work at the restaurant, and we're going to do some things. So, and that was 10 years ago.
Yeah. And so you were born in Charleston. I
was born in Charleston.
So you're a Charlestonian.
Yeah, I'm one of the few.
Yeah. You know, Charlotte's the same way. There isn't a whole lot of people from there,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of people there.
Yeah, I lived in Charlotte for 2 years too.
Cool.
So, I mean, I was working at Vanguard.
Okay.
So they got a big office there, and that's what brought me to Arizona.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to ask how you ended up in Arizona.
Yeah. So they, it was kind of this weird, you know, we went and visited Arizona. It was in February. Of course, it's gorgeous. So we're in the Scottsdale area. Visited there in February. We've been trying to sell our house in Charlotte. This is 2007, so terrible time to sell a house.
Yeah, right. That was right before like the bottom dropped out.
Yeah, it was
right?
like right as it it was 2008. I was trying to sell in 2008.
Okay. So that's
so
when
it
happened. It had dropped out.
And I'm working at Vanguard in investments, and so I'm having to deal with all our clients calling and it's awful.
Hey,
Everything's
just everything. Not a good time to be in finance.
Yeah. So, but anyway, we got back. We had a contract on the house within like a week. And I joked with them at Vanguard. I was like, so is there any job opportunities in Arizona? They're like, yeah, we got you right now. I'm like, okay. Well, so my wife and I didn't have kids at the time. So we're like, oh, let's just go. Like, I mean, what's holding us back? Yeah. So we lived there for about 4 years, got other great opportunities and experiences and experienced out west for a little while.
Nice. So you returned to Charleston in what year? That was
it was 2012.
And did you go back and work with your dad?
Yep. We drove across country, and then the next day I was working.
And at that time it was just 82 Queen. Or did he have other?
So he had 82 Queen and Lowcountry Bistro.
Okay.
Which hasn't been around for some years. But that was at 49 South Market, really close to 5 Church.
Yep.
So we were operating that at the time, and then in 2013 we talked to who's going to be our partner at the time, Anthony Bernardo, Swig and Swan. And so we started Swig and Swan with him.
Cool.
So we helped grow that to the 3 stores. I say we built 5 restaurants because we burned 2 down.
Did you really?
An experience nobody should ever go through.
Oh no.
Yeah. So
let's talk about that.
One was real bad. So I mean, there was one little mild one, but when the Somerville store had a catastrophic failure. And
was that a mechanical thing? Was it a
it was
human error thing?
It was stupid. It's an ember, you know, for those listening, about an inch big. For those watching, about that big.
Yeah.
And we watched it on the camera. An ember just fell out of the fireplace, which is where we had our started our burns, and it just fell underneath.
So you had
pile.
you had like a fireplace for like getting the logs burning, and then you transform them into the smoke.
So that one little ember fell underneath the log pile.
Oh man!
And then it went unchecked. And so like 2 hours later, we watch it, and then the whole room is on fire. And so we learned a lot from this experience, things you don't want to learn.
Yep.
So that room was actually, it was kind of glassed into the store, so you could look into it. Really cool. You know, how that laid out.
That was like the smoker room.
Yeah. And so there was 6 smokers in there. So, and for those of you who don't know, when you light a smoker on fire, there is grease in there, and it becomes a worse fire. Another mistake we had is we had a pressure washer right in front of that glass window right there. So once that caught, it then exploded, and it exploded the glass, which then introduced a bunch of cold oxygen into the room, and it created a bomb.
So backdraft.
The roof,
I'm having like backdraft.
Yeah, the roof blew off the building.
Whoa, holy smokes.
Yeah. No pun intended.
Yeah, good one.
So
God, I'm sorry to hear that.
That was
when was that?
That was 2017.
Okay,
I want to say 2017.
All right,
so
2 years ago.
I mean,
business trauma,
business wise, the worst experience of my life.
Yeah.
And then having to deal with insurance and everything after that, and we got it rebuilt, and it took about a year and a couple months, and we got it rebuilt and back open.
Wow, holy
and
smokes.
then that was also the real nut kicker for that day. Was we were all having a meeting there earlier that day of the fire.
Yep.
And we had made the decision and committed to buying new equipment that was safer.
Wow.
And then
so you were having a safety conversation and then boom.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's horrifying. Yeah. I can't imagine.
I don't want anybody to ever go through that. It's awful.
I'm gonna knock on something.
Yeah.
It's like I have not had that experience yet.
And you don't want it.
And I don't
Please
want
don't
it.
have it.
Yeah, I won't. Thank you. I also don't do barbecue, so that's
it's a lot safer in the world of non-barbecue,
right?
So.
Well, we do have we entered into the world of live fire at Tempest, our newest spot here, and we have a charcoal oven. Now the cool thing is that it's an enclosed oven.
You can just shut it down.
You can shut it. You can close it down. You can whatever, and it's also charcoal. Yeah. So we don't have like ripping flames. It's more like it's embers and stuff like that, and it's small. I mean, but it cranks some heat.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's been a fun to work with, but I can't imagine having to deal with like
no, and you're managing
6
like
giant smokers. How big were your smokers? Like how much meat would you guys?
If we were to fill everything at one shot, it's about 1,200 pounds of meat.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a lot of meat.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
Learned a lot through that experience. When did the Queen Street Hospitality Group start? Did your father start that with that Queen, or did he kind of start the hospitality group later as he decided?
I guess the actual answer to the question is I don't know. We just kind of started naming, like token that name.
Yeah.
So, but if we say, if I was to give it a date, it's when he bought out the last partner.
Okay.
So that was in 2011. He bought out the last partner of 82 Queen. It was just him.
Gotcha.
And so now, fast forward 2022, January 1, 2022, he retired.
Yeah.
And so now he's out, and it's just my brother and I.
Okay. When did he just retired?
Yeah, 1 year ago.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. Right on. Good for him. So how's that going? Now you and your brother, how's it like working with the fam?
It has its interesting moments. I mean,
I can imagine.
It's your brother. Sometimes
it's also the restaurant business, which has its own
all family in its own right. And you all yell at each other and curse at each other, and you get through it at the end of the day, and then you have a beer.
Yeah. So how do you guys divvy up responsibilities now? So
we figure that out day to day. But I mean, for the most part, I'm the financial guy. So I do that. So. I feel like I'm more the back of the house guy too, because I kind of started there more so. And then if I like fall into who am I going to help, I tend to help the back of the house more. Yeah. I don't know why. It just kind of falls that way. And especially
is it that you're more comfortable with the food, or is it that
I think it's that I love food so much. And so like I care about the quality and what we're putting out. And I feel like that's a good place for me to make sure that we're putting out the best product. So, and then from the front of the house side, I mean, I do care about that too, but I mean, he's a better front of the house operator.
Gotcha.
So I'll give him that. Gotcha. So, he kind of helps the front of the house side, and then he's better with facilities than me. So he's more maintenance minded, so he can handle that. And we're in a 150-year-old building, so there's a maintenance problem every single day.
I fully can relate. Both of
you're
our
downtown.
in a 100-year-old church.
Right. Yeah.
Which has, I mean,
something breaks every day.
We actually, and I don't know if you guys do this or not, but we finally smartened up or wised up to the fact that we needed to have a maintenance team on our payroll. Yeah. Like instead of paying somebody to come in every, 3 times a week to fix a plumbing problem or whatever. Right. So we finally wised up to that, and it's been amazing to have a team like focused on that.
Yeah, we've got one gentleman right now, and he's great. Yeah. And so we kind of all pitch in and help, and then obviously we got subs that help do the big stuff. But we're training him on things, so we put him through backflow testing. So he's now got his backflow certification. Nice. So that's one of those stupid little things nobody in restaurants outside of restaurants ever understand you got to do every single year. Yep. And it's like $300 per backflow. So that alone, will save some money on that. Yep. He's getting some things in his personal life figured out, but then we're going to put him through HVAC training. Nice. And as you know, that'll save us lots of fortune. Yeah, especially down here. Yeah. I mean, in the summer, it's like your HVAC is like life. Oh, if that goes down, you're done. Yeah, that dining room's done. Yeah. Wow. Crazy. Cool. So, how many operations are you guys responsible for right now? So currently two. So we've got 82 Queen, we've got Jalisco Taqueria on James Island, which we opened that December 13th of 2019. When did the pandemic start? 2019. March yeah. So we opened like 3 months before the pandemic started. So for the first 2 months, we're like, man, this is awesome. Like, this is what a business should be. And then the pandemic hit, and it's been a struggle ever since. Yeah. And I think, not to talk too much about the pandemic because I'm glad it's over. Yeah. But people's dynamics and how they eat and everything's changed a lot. And so that area of James Island where once was super busy is not. Yeah. And so it's been a little bit of a struggle right there. So I don't want to talk about the pandemic, but I think the results of it are interesting. And you mentioned that people's kind of dining dynamic changed. What do you mean by that? Like what are you seeing in your place? Are they shifting locations? Is it how they're eating? So at least with what we're seeing, so we have a tourist restaurant, we have a locals restaurant. I think the spending on eating has changed a lot more towards tourism spending. So locals, James Island, I think one other metric that I will always look at when opening a new restaurant is grocery stores per capita, which James Island has got to be the highest grocery store per capita in the world. So that means they eat at home. And I should have paid more attention to that. I live on James Island. I love James Island. But there's like 9 grocery stores for 27,000 people. And then West Ashley has like 4 grocery stores for 200,000 people.
Interesting.
So that's a metric that I'm always going to use from now on.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I would never thought of that.
It's a weird one.
Yeah. Interesting. So, and now that brings up, I wonder, like, if the kinds of grocery stores that are in that neighborhood will affect that number too.
I think that's true too. So, like we're in front of a food line, and I don't think that we get a lot of crossover business. You think from a grocery store you should.
Right.
But I think if we were in front of a Publix or a Harris Teeter, we may get more. Not saying anything bad about Food Line. I love it. I shop there too. But
sure.
And definitely it's the saving grace for the restaurant when we run out of something.
Yeah, right. Yeah. How many of those receipts do you guys get a week?
Too many.
Yeah. Same. Yeah. I think that's it's just something you always. We've got the Teeter close by, and when it's like somebody's always running.
So that downtown Teeter here in Charleston. So I know one of the co-managers there, and he ordering for him is the hardest thing. And they have their their automated programs that do ordering. Yeah. But it can't account for I ran out of straws today because a restaurant came and wiped me out.
Yeah. They're used to like residential. Like a case of. That's hilarious. Cool. Let's talk a little bit about the Lowcountry Hospitality Association. Mm-hmm. What is the history of that? You're vice president of that, is that right?
Yeah, I'm the vice president of the Lowcountry Hospitality Association, which the history of that, it started with some guys back in the 1980s wanting to get the restaurants together to do stuff, and whether it's even just get the operators together to have parties, which that happened a lot back in the 80s. So is the Charleston Restaurant Association at the time. The Hotel Association had their own thing, and so we'll get to that in a moment, but. So Lowcountry Hospitality Association, about 5 or 6 years ago, there's a lot of efficiency of bringing together the hospitality, like the hotels and the restaurants together. Mm-hmm. So, one of the main things that it's evolved into is a political voice. And so bringing more people together, you have more voice. And so we can, accumulate that to go talk to representative centers, what have you. Mm-hmm. And so that was about 5 or 6 years ago. And so as part of that, the Charleston Restaurant Foundation was under the Charleston Restaurant Association. So we split it off at the time to achieve our goals there, and then not have to be intertwined with, you don't want to have politics and fundraising necessarily together. Right. Obviously they go together all the time, but at least not the way we do it.
So does the foundation fund the association?
The foundation is now completely separate. Okay. So it doesn't fund the association at all.
Okay. It's got its own entity.
Yeah. So the association is funded a couple different ways. So we have affiliate members and we have members of it. So affiliate members are your vendors and things like that. That we have a vendor show for them and things like that. And then the membership, which it's now all a little confused, because if you are a member of Travel Council with the Charleston Area Convention and Visitor Bureau, you have a membership with LHA, as long as you're a restaurant or hotel. And so you can participate in that. So that's where we get the other funding from.
Gotcha. So. Cool. And then, so how much of the focus is dealing with legislation on behalf of restaurants and the community, restaurant community, and how much of it is, there's some events, like we'll talk a little bit about the Restaurant Week, which is coming up, and those kind of activities. Yeah.
So it's, you can kind of look at it almost like a three-legged, activity of what we do. So one is the political side. So the other is workforce development. And then the other is kind of everything else. So like the events and things like that. So, the political side is political side. So obviously there's hundreds of bills that go through the House, the Senate, both federal and local every year that need an opinion from a restaurant person or a hotel person. And they need an opinion. Sometimes a lot of those people, they don't know the industry. And so they are looking for people who do know. And so that's one big piece. The event side, so, talking about Restaurant Week, which we do in Charleston twice a year, which makes no sense at all, but it's great for operators and the employees in there. So that, help put those on and be the marketing, end of that. The other big piece that's really spurred up in the last 3 years is the workforce development piece. And that's one that I think we're only just scratching the surface of. And not to mention that weird 3 years that passed us, but that put a damper on it too. Right. So, there's things in there like just training. So, a lot of restaurant operators, hotels are a little different, but restaurant operators, they don't have the capital to put together a good, robust training program. Especially a small mom and pop, it's here, hit the floor and start doing it, and then we'll figure it out later. Yep. Bigger operations have a little bit more to it, but, say, through the CVB and the LHA, you have an opportunity to send your salespeople to a class, like a 1-day class. They can teach them how to be better salespeople, and that's no charge.
Right.
So, I mean, that's some great things to put there. Every restaurant has to have ServSafe certified people. So membership includes ServSafe certification. So, I mean, just the training piece alone. And then other than that, going out to, job fairs, going to colleges and trying to attract people to Charleston, that part's not terribly hard, attracting them here.
Yeah.
If you're coming from Chicago, I mean, come on, who doesn't want to live here?
Yeah,
so,
totally. Yeah, anywhere up north, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's cold now, but I was looking Chicago 7 degrees today. No, I'm good. I'll stay here.
And I'll tell you, and I think I think that some of the backlash from this pandemic thing too is the people living in all those huge cities. Like there's a lot of benefits to being in a city like that. But having a little bit of space too, and and I think you see a lot of those people coming south because they're, you're not built on top of each other. You're not, you do have a little bit of buffer zone.
You can breathe a little bit.
Yeah. And that's important these days for sure.
Yeah.
So what other kinds of things do you guys are you working on or thinking about working on? Is there anything new that you're working on as far as the development part of the workforce? Because I think that's a really important part of what you guys are doing now, especially with the exodus of 25% of the workforce vaporized.
Well, let me comment on that, at least here in Charleston real quick, just the metrics of people. So before the pandemic, the Charleston area employed 47,000 people in hospitality. What would you guess it is today?
I have no idea.
50,000 people.
Okay.
So we're employing more today than before the pandemic. So, which is crazy to think that some of us feel short-staffed still. But I think if you look at just the operations that opened during the pandemic.
Yeah, because there was growth.
Yeah, there's a ton of growth.
Yeah.
And not necessarily sustainable growth. That's a whole nother issue that other people can talk about.
Yeah. Yep. I know anything about that, so I'm not. I'm not even going to.
But it's good news at least to the city to work in this industry.
Yeah.
And then I do think in the recent time, you're hearing lots of layoffs, from other industries. I think we're the beneficiary of it. And so we're starting, I don't know how you see it. I'm getting applications.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. We're getting applications. I mean, I think it's finding for us the difficult thing. And I think that's true of most. It depends on your operation, but the thing that I'm interested in is finding the right people. Yeah. There are restaurants.
I'm so happy we're not at Bodies anymore. Like we were there.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Like I just need hands. Like it doesn't matter. Just come in here and hold this.
I have one chef at Jalisco. He's like, "Can you put fog on glass?" You're right.
Yeah.
We're past that.
Yeah. Right. And I think that's the hard part, right? Is and I think when you shift from being just a restaurant operation or a food service operation to a hospitality operation, that piece of the puzzle becomes so much more valuable. People are the thing that is the difference between serving food and serving hospitality,
and I think
right?
When we go back to the LHA, that is one of our goals, is to maintain hospitality in the city of Charleston. And that's something that piece of culture can get lost so fast. By we're hiring bodies and we're not training the people, and it just survive.
Yeah.
We got to get past survival.
So what kind of trainings, and you mentioned trainings for like a sales training for people, and then the sanitation stuff. Is there other training opportunities? Like what else is involved there for people that don't know? Because I don't know, and I'm interested.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. And Jenny at the CVB, she can tell anybody a whole lot more than I can about this. But I mean, there is just hospitality training too. So I mean, back to that piece of culture that Charleston needs to have. I mean, there's classes on how to be hospitable. Yeah. Which seems insane, from a Charlestonian, because that's how we grew up. But I think these things. Yeah. They're ruining us. And so I mean, I've got kids. I call them kids. They're probably adults at this point. But I got kids. I mean, they don't know how to talk on a phone. And so, I mean, there's just things like that, trained to that point. It's like how to answer the phone properly, how to talk to somebody. And it's not all texting. It's right. Yeah. You can have a conversation.
Do you think that so I've been struggling with this, and my kind of like approach to our operation is, we've had to shift gears a lot and, evolve how we do the business we do. I'm kind of old school. I'm probably the oldest school chef in our group, and my approach is kind of old school. But I've had to think about new ways to reach my team, to inspire my team to do better, to learn the information, to stay connected, because it's different. Embracing these things, right? Do you think that part of me thinks the future is finding ways to use that. And actually, I think when we first started, I was screaming at people all the time about having their phones. Like, get rid of those. I don't want to see your fucking phone. But I'm starting to wonder, and I've been wondering for a while, and thinking about different ways to use the technology, because I have an 18-year-old son. He's juiced in to his phone. And that's just how he communicates and maneuvers through the world. So if that's true, then maybe we got to embrace that in hospitality and find ways to do.
Yeah. The little things that at least our staff have picked up on. Like, we use Resi, and they do love texting.
Yeah.
Well, Resi, you can text your customers. And you can see they do confirmations through there, and they'll have conversations via Resi on text. And I guess to that degree, it is they're practicing hospitality just in their way.
Right.
And so what I'd be curious to see is, I follow the crypto market, and virtual real estate and how that interacts with restaurants.
Virtual real estate.
Yeah,
I don't even want to go down that road.
Let's not talk about that. But
we'll talk about that off.
Look at the metaverse and how's that going to relate to restaurants? And I think that's something we're going to have to cross that bridge. Not in the next 5 years, but in the next decade. I think we're going to start thinking about it.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so it's kind of neat. Like, so if you're thinking about
does hospitality exist in the metaverse?
It has to. Right?
I don't know.
We're going to make it.
Yeah, there's going to be a market there. We'll have to figure out what that means.
I guess think if you're thinking like DoorDash, you're going out, you're looking for something to eat, somebody delivered to you.
Yeah.
What if it is like you're walking down a mall and there's a bunch of menus, and you can I don't know, it seems weird to me, but you can look over here, look at this menu, look over here, look at this menu. I'm gonna buy from there. So it probably is going to be here.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
I'm sure it will be here at some point. But let's talk about the universe, the universe that we're in. And I want to talk about Restaurant Week because it's coming up and it's important. And we talked a little bit before about how maybe a lot of people don't understand why we do Restaurant Week. And I think it's important to talk about that a little bit. And I also want to talk about the Oyster Festival because that's interesting. And I think that's unique to the Charleston market, or at least coastal markets that have oysters to sell. So let's start off with Restaurant Week. How did that get here? We've been doing it. Some of the larger cities were doing it for a long time, but it's fairly new. With 10 years, like a decade or so?
I think we're about 15 years.
Okay.
Yeah, and so, you kind of nailed the start. So some of the bigger cities have been doing it for a while. So that was really looking at what did New York do, what did San Francisco do, and they had success, with these restaurant weeks and pulling locals out and go and eat. And so we looked at, as far as the association, what are the 2 worst weeks of the year? So right after Christmas in January, awful week.
Yep.
So, Restaurant Week has changed that dynamic now, but before we did Restaurant Week, let's say I'll use 82 Queen as an example. You could stand around and do 5 covers. 5.
Yeah.
With nothing. It's not even worth being open.
Right.
So that was, we often would close for maintenance, because I'm not going to pay people just to stand around and do nothing.
Right.
So close for maintenance. So this is a way, to keep people employed, because there's oftentimes in Charleston, there was winter layoffs. So, and then you'd have to rehire people right before Sea so they'd be laid off for 5-6 weeks.
Yep.
So, it keeps people employed, keeps servers making some money. They may complain about it, but it keeps them making some money, during that off time. Because right after Restaurant Week, they get a taste of it. That week after is not good.
Yeah. Yes.
So, and that's what that is now today is better than what it was 15 years ago.
Right.
So, and then the other worst week of the year was right after Labor Day.
Okay.
And so school's back in.
Yeah.
Everything.
People are trying to get their groove back together. They're not thinking about going out.
Yeah. So the week after Labor Day, so that's the actual Charleston one. And then the January one is the South Carolina.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. And so that's coming up. That's going to be this year. It's what we took
January 12th to 22nd.
22nd. And do you know how many restaurants are participating?
I'm not updated on the metrics on that. Yeah. So if you go to Lowcountry Hospitality Association.com, it's got a list of all the restaurants on there.
Cool.
It also has whatever their specific deal is and a link for reservations.
Is there any sort of what are the rules for Restaurant Weeks for participating restaurants? Are there any, or is it just kind of like?
So we had rules when we first did.
Yeah.
So when we first started, it was like you're doing 3 courses, $30.
Yeah.
3 courses, $40. And so then after 6-7 years, it's evolved to really be whatever you want to offer. I agree and disagree with that decision at the same time, but I think it's allowed other people to participate that wouldn't have participated. So in that regard, it's great.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, if you got a restaurant that didn't fall into a 3 for $30 type restaurant, like they couldn't do it before.
Mm-hmm.
So now they can do it. Or if you've got, somebody that's too high end to do 3 for $30, I mean, 3 courses, $30 for a high end restaurant. I mean, that doesn't work for them either. So now it's kind of wide open. Do whatever you want. I think, the most important metric is it's bringing people out to eat.
Yep.
And so the hotels have benefited from it too, because it's actually bringing tourism to Charleston, in that weird pocket of time that shouldn't have tourism. How long
is that a fairly new development? Is it people coming to Charleston for Restaurant Week? Because I feel like early on, I've been doing it for I think 7 years here. So for us, I didn't really notice visitors coming out to enjoy it so much as we were trying to drag out locals that maybe were like hunkering down, a little hungover from the holidays, and we're like, hey, here's a little incentive. How long have you been noticing the hotels benefiting?
I've been more in tune with it since we became the LHA.
Okay.
The hotel's part of our group, and so that's now about 5 years. But I think it's been, almost from the beginning, it's brought some people.
Okay.
But now it's just so much more.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes back to that dynamic of, when and where do I want to spend my money?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's, through the last 3 years, it's become more and more on just experiences in general.
Mm-hmm.
And is it an experience to go out in my own city? I think it's one of those debates that people have. And I don't
Sure.
blame them. They should have that debate.
Right.
So, do I want to experience something in another city? I live in Columbia.
Mm-hmm.
It's only a 2-hour drive. I can spend one night, go eat a couple restaurants, and then go back home.
Right.
So that's a better experience than I'm going to go to 5 Points in Columbia and find somewhere to eat.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's a whole different. I'm a Clemson fan, so I'm always going to make fun of Columbia. But.
What are hotels doing some sort of deal during Restaurant Week as well?
The option is
Okay.
to offer deals for.
Are you familiar of any that are?
I'll refer to the website.
Yeah. Okay. I hope that they do, and that would be something that I think could benefit everybody. Right? Is like get that, because people want to come to Charleston.
And I know, like Lowcountry hotels, they will offer. I know that.
Yeah.
So and other groups are offering too. So.
Okay. 82 Queen obviously is going to be participating. Yeah. I know our restaurants always participate. I love doing it. I think there's a couple of other facets of this I think we should talk about. And one is, keeping people employed. You mentioned what when we started doing it in Charlotte years ago, before we even opened down here, staff gets squirrely after the holidays. They spend all their money, they like to go out and party. There's a lot of Christmas things going down, or holiday parties. And then it just dries up, right? And after New Year's, it's huge. You like blow the roof off, record sales, all that kind of stuff, huge tips. And then there's nothing for 4 weeks. And you have to live off of that. And I think, one thing that we've tried to do, and I think staff that's been in the industry for a while get it now. People that are like lifers, right? Like servers that are going to be hospitalitarians forever. They know Restaurant Week's coming, and that this is an opportunity for them to earn in a time that's typically slow. I think that's super important. And then moreover, for us, for me, I think it's about capturing a clientele that you maybe wouldn't otherwise get. And I think that's, yes, bringing out the locals and bringing out people that are maybe hungover from the holidays and spending money, but also the opportunity like the tourists that come in, or people that maybe, wouldn't check out a restaurant, give it a try because there's a value there. I think that's the key about the restaurants. Maybe operating at a slightly higher margin during that time to offer a value to earn that.
Well, if you think, let's say it's a 3-course for 30, I'll say 30, just because that's what it used to be. But that's not necessarily asking restaurants to run a 40% food cost or 45% food. You can still run a 30% food cost.
Right.
3 courses can be a lot of food.
Yeah.
Especially in a lot of restaurants, that is a lot of food.
Mm-hmm.
So you can still run your 30 or, we 24%. But you can just still run your margin, that you want to run. And you nailed it on the head. Getting some people out who may not have experienced you before.
Right.
I think the one thing, at least maybe to Queen, you kind of take for granted is all these new people moving to Charleston.
Mm-hmm.
There's 54 people a day moving here. An insane metric.
Right.
we've been around 40 years. They don't know who the hell I am. And so getting in front of some of those people that have moved to Charleston that don't have no idea who we are,
right?
It's a great opportunity, and bringing the tourist in too. But the local business is great.
Yeah,
and you want them,
100%
all the time.
Well, and they're the ones that are gonna be they're going to kind of set the bar for where the tourists want to go, right? It's like the tourists always want to figure out where the locals go. You always have your staples, and I think 82 Queen, I think, is one of those. Is like a staple. Yeah, I think it's one of the first restaurants I heard of when I.
Yeah, we were one of 5 fine dining restaurants in Charleston.
Yeah,
5. So.
Do you guys still operate as a fine dining operation? Or you?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
We kind of toe that line, because we definitely play the menu to be more inclusive, than just fine dining. So I got rid of white tablecloths, some years ago.
Yep.
One was definitely a cost factor that.
I was going to say that. I was like, is that because they're stuffy or because they cost a fortune to put on the table? Yes. yeah.
But I think it kind of changed the dynamic. It's not like it's just a white tablecloth restaurant.
Right.
And it's Lowcountry food. It's for us. So it is homey food. It doesn't have to be in a stuffy environment.
Right.
And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that.
Sure.
But for us, a lot of the experiences come experience our courtyard and experience these old buildings that you're being able to dine in, and a consistently great quality food.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be the best food you ever put in your mouth, but it's going to be great quality every time you eat it.
Yeah. Cool. Shifting gears, Oyster Fest. Also coming up.
Yeah, January 29th.
Okay.
So ticket sales are going phenomenal.
Okay.
For that. So that event, this will be its 39th event. We've missed a couple years in history. It would be over 40 by now.
Okay.
But the 39th event of it. And, it started with like 10 guys wanting to do an oyster roast and, in a boot hall in the backyard area. And I think they went through like 50 bushels of oysters, and they're like, man, this is a fantastic success. Fast forward to today, and I've got an order in for 800 bushels of oysters, and
wow.
And we're planning on about 8,000 people being there. Just tremendous growth over that time period.
Yeah.
And we've actually scaled it back, over the years. At one point we were at 13,000 people, and that's way too many people for boot hall. Besides parking alone, it's just way too many people.
Right.
So 8,000 is a comfortable level. VIP's almost sold out already. So awesome. That's a huge area we've been putting a lot of effort into, is the VIP area.
Yep.
Because it's 100% inclusive. So you just go in there, you're done.
Yep.
And then the rest of the event, we've been growing the restaurants. If you want to participate, we'd love to have you in there.
Okay.
So the restaurants in there, the oyster pit in there. With the newest developments on that in the last couple of years, is we are offering full bar, which we did not for many, many years until last year.
That's going to be
that's a whole new yeah. So we from an event standpoint, we towed into it very cautiously.
Yeah.
And so we did all RTDs, ready to drink, pre-made cocktails to start. Like, let's see how this goes.
Yeah.
Most of us, beer and wine events, we're used to that, on the large scale.
Yeah.
But 8,000 people throwing liquor at it, we weren't sure.
Yeah, and it's a whole new dynamic. It brings a whole new energy to an event.
It was, very successful, with that piece, and we were all, a little scared of people getting too drunk. That didn't happen.
That's great.
So that's success for that. So we're going to expand on that, piece of the puzzle.
So paint the picture of what the Oyster Fest looks like for somebody who isn't from Charleston or hasn't been to the.
Yeah, I think we should start with you. Are from Charleston, because this oyster roast thing is kind of a foreign concept, which I grew up in Charleston. I always thought like everybody in the world does this,
right?
But oyster roast is a weird concept for a lot of people. Like, they're used to raw oysters, and that's our oysters Rockefeller, some sort of that way. So old Charlestonians, you go and you pick some oysters, you throw them over the fire, put a burlap sack on it, and then you go, you eat them. We don't do it that way. We steam them, so it's way more efficient to steam them.
Yeah.
So that's what it evolved into, is steaming oysters.
Gotcha.
So a lot of people do it in their backyards, during the burr months. And so, February's kind of right, tail end, of it. And so one big oyster roast, for charities. And so I think that's one of the other keys of this event, is it's 100% charitable. So there's, say, board of directors or people involved, nobody makes any money on this.
Yep.
We give away everything we get. Not to say these events don't cost a lot of money to put on.
Yeah, they cost a ton to put on. How much? What charities does the money go to? Are there specific ones, or is it, or does it change year to year?
We open up applications, but it's pretty specific, and we really focus on hospitality education.
Mm-hmm.
So, CFC is a beneficiary, Wando is a beneficiary. They got the Pro Start program. West Ashley High School, they got a Pro Start program. They're a beneficiary. Trinity Tech, we have a scholarship at Trinity Tech now. So Kathy Britzius was the founding executive director. If I said that right? Of the association. She passed away a few years ago, and so now we've got a scholarship in her name at Trinity Tech.
Nice.
Awesome lady.
Yeah.
I wish people could still meet her today.
Yeah.
So, that's there. And then we look at other places, for education style
Mm-hmm.
scholarships. And another big beneficiary is the Coastal Conservation Association.
Yep.
So
It's a huge one here.
it's a huge one.
Yeah.
I mean, and going into oyster farming,
Mhm.
and the sustainability of oysters is a big deal. And it's amazing what oysters do for our waters.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't know that.
So I did a podcast with Trey McMillan. And so he's awesome. I mean, he's been a good friend for a long time, so I spent a lot of time out on his farm as he was like building it up, just learning about the process and stuff like that. As a chef, I've always known about oysters and I've always prepared them, but I didn't know, like, he's an oyster geek, right? Like, he's so consumed by it, and he loves to talk about it. So it was great to learn about how influential they are on, like, restoring the natural resources, like where the oyster beds are. I mean, I can't remember the numbers, but he spit out, but it's something ridiculous how many gallons of oysters they filter a day. It's like, it's crazy. It's a number, like he said it, and I was like, that's bullshit. but it's true. Yeah, but it's true. And so just that effect alone is huge for, kind of undoing man's,
Yeah, and then the other thing, so think about our fisheries too. So I mean, you get the oysters, you get them renourished, fish go back to them. And so now the fishing gets better. It's just it's a great story.
Yes.
And I think it's one that, as we've done the event for this long, all of us have come to appreciate that piece of it more and more and more.
Yep.
And so then all the oyster shells that we produce go right back into our waters.
Yep.
And so, from a greedy standpoint, some of these oyster shells come from Virginia. So we're getting their oyster shells right into our waters. And so we're replenishing our beds, with other people's.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's such an important, I'm glad you touched on that, because, Tempest, our restaurant down there, is, the ethos of that restaurant is South Atlantic seafood, right? Like, we do have lobsters from Maine on there because we don't have lobster here.
You gotta get it from even further south.
Yeah.
The Spinies. I love the Spinies.
Well, I know. And so, I had never really eaten spiny lobsters before, and I was introduced to them recently from a chef buddy of mine, and I'm going to start figuring how I can utilize that. Yeah. But going back to the conservation part of it, South Atlantic seafood is important to us, and a lot of the things that we've tried to do is develop relationships with local fishermen, and then not buy the stuff from the big pack houses where it's coming from, Maine or Boston or where Florida, although some of it does, but we try to get it as localized as possible. And it's important that, we support events like this so that the fishery is healthy and abundant, and so that restaurants like Tempest and 82 Queen can benefit from having grouper and rockfish and all these fish that will be here as a result of that.
Yeah, and if we can get the price of grouper down by doing this, I'm all for that.
Yeah, right?
I love grouper.
Yeah. So what's your favorite fish?
I'll probably say grouper.
Yeah.
But so the Nassau grouper. So I love the ones. So go back to spiny lobster like that. So I love everything that comes out of the water there. So
I'm heading down there pretty soon, next month.
Let's see. You're in season. So bring your spear.
It's time to. I don't have one. I'm gonna figure it out. I'm gonna go figure it out though. Do you guys cook any redfish?
That is one thing. We've never really done it. Yeah. And it's just growing up here, even only like 15 years ago, it was like cool to eat it as a person.
Right.
Residentially. And, I think this restaurant, Red Drum,
yeah.
Kind of brought that idea, that you can actually eat this fish in a commercial.
Yeah.
I mean, for those that don't know, the history of it, like Paul Prudhomme, in New Orleans, like really brought it to light.
Yep.
It was a garbage fish people threw away, and then he started blackening it, serving it, and people fell in love with it. And I think it almost wiped the population out.
Really?
Yeah. So one person almost
Paul Perdome, you're responsible for.
Yeah. And so now that it's a great fishery everywhere.
Yeah.
And so at least here in South Carolina, it's not commercially not really available. So we got to get it from Louisiana, which doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah. Do you know why that is, I wonder?
I think it's our DNR still has the limits on it commercially. It's probably a little more political than that, right? The residential.
Yeah.
I say recreational fishermen. Or kind of protecting that one. So I love the fish.
Yeah. So I went fishing with actually one of Trey's buddies, has like a inshore fishing outfit, and we went out with him, and it was the first time I'd probably caught a fish. I think like I've been fishing a lot and never caught anything. I did a lot of fishing and not a lot of catching, but
caught the buzz.
Yeah, exactly. So when we went out, we caught some redfish, and they are fun to catch. I mean, they are mean fish, and so that was exhilarating and super fun. And then we kept them. I'm from up north, of New York and stuff, and so I never had redfish or red drum, and so we cooked it up, and it's not a bad fish. If you don't get the big ones, like they're super tasty.
Yeah, the slotfish are great.
Yeah. I want to try to bring that to Tempest and see if I can sell it. Yeah. Cool. So oyster roast, that's happening
January 29th. Yeah, January 29th.
Is it one day?
One single day. Hopefully one day we may change that, but it's one single day. So it starts at 10 o'clock in the morning, goes till 5. We've got bands lined up, ready to play all day. There's the competitions. Not necessarily my cup of tea, one of them, which is the oyster eating competition, which is you see people with gallon oysters and they just, by the cup, swallow them down.
Oh my gosh.
It's already people get really into it. I've been part of this event for a long time. I can't watch that one. The oyster shucking competition, though, that one's pretty cool. Awesome. And so there's, some legacy people who've been doing it for years, and those people can shuck oysters. Yeah. I mean, better than anybody I've ever seen.
What, as far as oyster varieties, do you guys focus on anything? Are you guys trying to, is it southern oysters? Are there northern oysters from everywhere?
So really two places. So when the oyster festival started, it was all local oysters.
Yeah.
So our local beds cannot keep up, with this. And on top of it, January is a fantastic month for people's home oyster roast. So even our local pickers can't keep up.
Yeah.
So Trey is bringing out, I think, 300 bushels this year.
Okay.
Local oysters from the Edisto area. So and then he's going to be cooking those, and I think he's offering some for shucking or for raw oysters as well.
Nice.
So we get the balance from James River.
Okay.
So the James River beds, they're strong, and they can provide the quantity that we need.
Yep.
So it's about 500 bushels that we're getting from them. I mean, it's a lot of oysters.
Yeah.
So Trey thinks he can, in a couple of years, he may be able to bridge that gap a little more.
Yeah, I hope so.
So
well,
so the dynamic of people eating them is weird though. They like the James Rivers, a lot of people, because they're singles, because they're gigantic. When I get a picture of somebody like it's the size of their entirety.
Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like that either.
I love my local oysters, and they can be the size of my fingernail, but I still love them.
I grew up on the North Shore of Boston, so the big oyster town. Lobster is our thing, and like the Cape Cod oysters they're medium sized. They're not tiny. Trays are small oysters, which I like a lot, and they're super briny. But the big honking, like I can't do them. Like some of those Canadian oysters get big too, and it's just too much.
It's funny, like my daughter, she's 11 years old. She loves the giant snot rockets. Like that's her favorite.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. You can eat them.
That actually gave me a thought. Not the snot rocket, but the giant oyster, about how to maybe prepare those in a way where they don't have that texture of snot rocket, where you could do it in a way where it brings out the meatiness of them a little bit more. I wonder if there's a way to do that, but anyways, that's for another. Right. Cool. So what else is going on? That's I think we covered oysters, we covered restaurant week. What else do you guys have coming down the pipeline? What's the focus right now?
Yeah, so we the last 3 years have been weird. I haven't grown in 3 years. That's been a really weird time of my life.
Yeah.
Because one of my main philosophies, I stole it from Danny Myers, but is creating opportunities for my staff.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way to create opportunities in this business is to grow your business and create 100%. More stores.
Yep.
So we haven't done that in 3 years. It's been driving me insane.
Yeah.
I've actually realized that I've been kind of depressed for the last 3 years because of that.
Yeah.
So now coming out of it, I've got like a lot of ideas, a lot of things we want to do, and one of the things I've been looking for the last year and a half is an event space.
Mm-hmm.
And so the other piece of the puzzle is I get calls at 8 Queen of groups I cannot take. And that, as an operator, drives you insane on that side. So I wasn't growing my staff and I'm turning away business. I'm like, how does this make sense?
Yeah, got to fix it.
Yeah, so we're looking at an event space
Cool.
right now. So we'll hopefully within the next couple of weeks, be able to announce, that, but it might be called the Sweet Restroom. Might already have a website. Might already have an LLC ready to go.
So it's happening. It's happening. It's just where it's going to be.
Yeah. I'm 95% sure I know where it's going to be.
Nice.
It might be very close to where we're sitting right now.
Awesome. I hope that you can announce that soon.
I really do. So that, is one kind of small piece of the puzzle, but what it really kind of launches is our catering department again.
Mm-hmm.
So, after we sold our business, Swig and Swine, we had a giant catering crew. With that, we haven't really got back into the catering game. And it is a tremendously fun piece of the puzzle for hospitality.
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly, I love that. I love the event side.
Yeah.
The restaurant side I love too, but it's just a whole different thing. You get to see different things, do this and that.
Right.
And, as a chef, you get to tailor your menu to what that person wants versus I have my menu, which I love,
mm-hmm.
but I've made the same dish 8,000 times. I'm ready to do something different.
Well, catering, you need to make 8,000 a day.
Yes.
of that dish.
At least it's
in
a
a
unique
day.
dish.
Yeah.
So, but I'm really looking to get back into that side of the business. And then while in the process of looking for spaces, I've actually been looking at restaurant spaces too.
Yeah.
And so I think, one of our goals 3 years ago, 3 years ago in a couple of days,
mm-hmm.
when we opened Jalisco, was I didn't want one store.
Right.
I wanted multiple stores.
Yeah.
And so, that, if you don't know, it's like high-end Mexican. Mm-hmm. It's on James Island. And, high-end Mexican is a thing that I don't think Charleston really knows very well about.
Mm-hmm.
It is a thing. Some of the Mexican food, the cuisine is so complex.
Mm-hmm.
And as a chef, you appreciate the complexity of it.
Yeah.
And so the chef there, he was a classically French trained chef, and it still can challenge him every single day.
Yeah.
So, getting that name out more and more, and growing that brand, how do we grow that brand? What do we do? So little things, we just bought a food truck. So I'm like the reverse of every other food truck guy. So we started with a restaurant, now we're in a food truck.
Yeah.
Versus start with a food truck, go to a restaurant. So one of that is mainly outreach.
Yeah.
It's just, bring it to other people, and then also use that to identify where to put the next restaurant.
Yep. Where is there a demand for that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so
like it.
I've got a lot of feelers in the Park Circle area.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to go over there, but I'm not pigeonholed to that. But I've got maybe one or two spots that I'm looking at pretty closely there.
Nice. Are you you're focused heavily in Charleston? You keep it close to home. And
I try to think of this idea, and you can teach me how to do it, but how to multi-city operate.
I can't teach you. We haven't got it figured out yet. We're successful at what we're doing right now, but it's an immense amount of effort. Sometimes I don't always do things the easy way. I do things my way, and it works, but it's maybe not the most efficient. It's maybe not the most, but we always get it there. I think, in our expansion, we've been blowing up because we were in the same boat. We were stagnant for 3 years, doing nothing but trying to figure out how to survive. And that was never part of our plan. And so we've been in hyperdrive we have a lot of talented staff that's been with us for a long, long time. And speaking to the Danny Meyer thing, we have to have places for these people to evolve and to grow and to become leaders and whatever, if we're going to stay successful. So we've been on that march. Although I think for us, our concept is it's pretty dynamic, but I don't think that one market will sustain multiple church and unions, or you know what I mean? You can't have multiple Tempests in Charleston. It's a very specific thing. And so for us, it's important to kind of, pick our markets like that. So it's been a challenge. It's been a lot of fun too.
Yeah, I keep thinking about 8 Queen. It's ventured outside of Charleston before, and it's did a Polly's Island location, and that wasn't successful. Mm-hmm. But I think that's a concept that can work in a few other cities, not everywhere.
Right.
It's very select. So
yes.
Savannah,
I think it could work well.
And I think even Greenville, it can work really well there. At least,
yep.
those are drive markets for me.
Mm-hmm.
So you can drive there.
Right.
I am a pilot, so I can.
Oh, cool.
There too, so
Yeah.
it makes it a little easy on that standpoint. So that's another thought process that I've learned from Tommy Hall.
Yeah.
Is he's got these stores in multiple locations all in the southeast.
Mm-hmm.
He has the plane and he can visit 2 and 3 of them a day.
Oh, wow.
And so, I mean, from a restaurant operator standpoint, we love to micromanage, even though we don't love to micromanage.
Oh, right. We can't help it. Yeah.
So,
It's in the DNA.
Physically being there,
Right.
is a big piece of the puzzle. And I know I'm not naive. My staff acts different when I'm there.
Yeah.
Than when I'm not there.
I think as an operator and as an owner, that has been probably the most challenging thing for me is like, how do I empower my team to like make decisions and become the leader that I want them to be without stepping on their toes and micromanaging them, and then but still being involved, right? Like, because I don't get to cook the way that, like, I'm a chef first.
You have the chef guilt.
Yeah, big time.
You're not there on the line with the guys,
Right.
And there's that guilt eating you inside.
Yeah, all the time. Like last night, I was obsessing about it. I'm actually going to do a podcast about it after this because I got to talk about it. I got to put it in motion how I can actually touch food again. So yeah, I got to go in there. I'm like tasting everything. They're like, oh shit, they're like fucking chefs here. He's gonna start bitching about this or that or whatever. But that's a tough skill to learn. But I think for any operators that want to grow and be successful, you have to embrace your team and give them the ability, right, to like take control and give them an avenue or a outlet to do that.
I think you gotta give them opportunities to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And you just have to be there to catch them so the mistake doesn't go bad.
Yeah.
So but let them make a mistake, let them learn from it, and,
Right.
and hopefully it doesn't hurt too many things.
Minimizing the fallout of a mistake is our job, right? It's like, how do we contain the damage to just like manageable? Right on. Cool. Well, I'm excited to hear about your event space. I hope that works out for you. Good luck with that. And maybe we'll circle back in a little bit. It was nice meeting you and good talking to you, man. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, cheers.
Cheers.